Ever since she was a child, Oshima was already well acquainted with the concept of death. People cannot resist death. It is inevitable. Working as a nurse certainly didn't help. After her fellow nurses share rumors about the hospital being haunted, Oshima, assigned to the night patrol, reluctantly begins her rounds. While passing through the dark corridors, she nearly has a heart attack after bumping into Mitsu, a patient at the hospital. She scolds him for wandering around alone, especially when his medical condition could trigger at any time. He explains that he heard Sugiyama, one of the other nurses, talking about ghosts wandering around the hospital. He wanted some proof, so he decided to head out alone to snap a photo or two. Oshima is quite skeptical that ghosts exist, but Mitsu, armed with a thermography app on his phone, desperately wants to prove that they do. This certainly isn't the worst thing that Mitsu has done, considering that he caused a steam explosion in the hospital's backyard a few weeks earlier, but she finds his fascination with ghosts intriguing. He explains that he simply finds them interesting, and that he is curious to see where he'd end up after he died. Oshima tries to reassure him that they will eventually find a cure, but Mitsu has somewhat accepted his fate. He has been growing out his hair in the hopes of cutting it once he had recovered, but he laments that he won't be able to anymore. Oshima says that he'd look great with short hair, and she'd like to see it one day. Mitsu is struck with an incurable disease that he has had since he was 9 years old. It was discovered 30 years ago by a group of British doctors, but they know neither its source nor the cure. The disease can easily fly under the radar despite frequent medical checkups, which makes it difficult to catch it early, when it is at its most treatable state. The disease causes Mitsu's body to be racked with pain, and he slowly suffers total organ failure. Mitsu returns to his room, where he glances at the flower vase on his desk. The flowers are called Ayame, which symbolizes hope. His mother hoped it would lift his spirits, and she had even promised to become a doctor and treat him. Everyone believed that Mitsu's disease could eventually be cured, but he alone held little hope for himself. His only fear was that he'd live a life without accomplishing anything. Suddenly, Mitsu starts coughing up blood again, and he starts vomiting on the ground. Oshima rushes to his side, but Mitsu can sense that his time has come. It's never been this bad before. As he lies in a pool of his own blood, Mitsu's consciousness slowly fades away. A three-eyed deer drinks water from a watering hole. Its third eye senses something gleaming near the trees, but it is too late. An arrow pierces its hind leg, and two goblin hunters rush to recover their quarry. Mitsu looks down at his glowing, stubby hands. He realizes that he has died and is now in an unfamiliar landscape. He can still remember what happened to him during his long stay at the hospital, but he feels like they are someone else's memories. He glances back at the two goblins, now joined by a third, who are eating the deer raw. He concludes that he must have collapsed and that this is some fantastical dream. The goblins notice Mitsu and fire an arrow at him, but the missile passes right through his ghostly body. One of the goblins wade through the water, waving its clubs and screaming hysterically, further convincing Mitsu that this is some bizarre dream. He'll wake up any second now. Mitsu's fight or flight instinct kicks in, and he cries out that he doesn't want to die. He stretches out his arm, which somehow instantly kills the goblin, and its spirit becomes one with him. Mitsu looks quizzically at his hand, and he has a rough understanding of what just happened. He absorbs something from the goblin's corpse. The remaining two goblins become agitated, but when Mitsu tries the same thing as before, the effects are slower. Regardless, he keeps his hand steady, and his will firmly set on not dying. Eventually, the two goblins succumb to his strange new power. Mitsu has now regained his form from when he was still alive. He has a dozen questions in his head. What is this power? Why won't their attacks hit? Is he a ghost now? As of right now, Mitsu only knows two things: that this is no longer the same world he is familiar with, and that he has a power that lets him drain another living being's life force. He aptly names it Absorb as a result. Mitsu looks at his reflection near the water, and he finally recognizes his face. However, he still doesn't know if he is Mitsu himself, or if he is simply a being that has assimilated Mitsu's memories into his own being. But the feeling of not wanting to die permeates throughout his being, and that is one other thing Mitsu can be sure of. He doesn't want to die, and he'll use this second chance to make sure he lives as long as possible. He will live, no matter what the cost. Mitsu decides to change his name to better suit his new situation. After thinking long and hard, he settles on Shu Archlight, which is something I would have named my Final Fantasy XIV character. Shu starts floating around, revealing that he has still retained some ghostly properties. He suddenly hears something coming from the nearby forest, and he seeks shelter in one of the nearby trees. Two children, Freddy and Miguel, curiously investigate the pile of goblin corpses that Shu left behind. Shu watches them with great caution. Freddy doesn't remember any monsters that could do this much damage to goblins, let alone 3 of them. Miguel doesn't remember any either. They drag out the goblin corpses from the water to prevent disease from spreading, and they wonder what could have killed them. Noticing that there doesn't seem to be any external trauma of any kind, they suspect that a ghost or a similar monster could have done it. Freddy breathes fire into his hand, which piques Shu's interest. Freddy attempts to cast Fireball, but the result is an unfortunate dud. Magic seems to be a latent skill that anyone can practice and develop, though Freddy doesn't have much luck with it. Seeing that his friend is completely useless, Miguel decides to cast the flame himself. However, Freddy is already pretty salty that he couldn't cast Fireball on his own, so he brings out a paid magical item to do it for him. His shiny gauntlet produces a great ball of flame, which burns the goblin corpses into ash. Freddy celebrates, but Miguel warns him that he might attract even more monsters. He ends up attracting a whole pack of goblins, which forces him and Miguel to fight back. Miguel holds them in place with some grasping roots, while Freddy burns them with his fire gauntlet. After defeating the goblins, the pair is exhausted, and they decide to go home. Shu overhears them talking about an exam of some sort, leading him to believe that they are students, which means that a town must be nearby. During his short period of observation, Shu was able to gather that magic exists in this world. It can be invoked through the use of chanting and magic circles, which are also dependent on the user's imagination and stock of magical power. Magical equipment also exists, though its power and strength are also dependent on the user's birth sign and latent magical power. Shu wonders if he too has this magical power they speak of, and he decides to perform a little experiment. He wants to create a ball of water to extinguish the flames burning the goblins, and he tries to recall the process of invoking a spell. It relies on his imagination and his understanding of natural phenomena. He then uses this information to talk to his magical energy and tell it what he wants to create. Shu closes his eyes and thinks hard about what his past life, Mitsu, learned from years of being bedridden with books and journals. He recalls the composition of water and how it interacts with his environment. He takes all these and more into consideration, and a magic circle naturally appears over his hands. Shu manages to produce water, but not in the shape that he desires. He remembers Freddy's words that magic is also based on imagination and imagery, so Shu thinks hard again, and he recalls a memory of a water yo-yo. He successfully molds the water in front of him into a sphere and wills it forward, launching it toward the burning goblin corpses. Shu looks at his hand and realizes what he is capable of, and what he can be capable of. Realizing that it may be possible to create more complex commands and images, he devotes himself to training his magical power, which he intends to use as a trump card in the future. 3 months pass. 3 magic students, Jazz, Alice, and the bespectacled Fiona, wander into the forest. Alice asks Jazz to use his magical detection skill to scout for any nearby monsters, and he spots what appears to be a high-ranking humanoid ghost roughly 50 meters away. Fiona is a bit worried to be facing a powerful foe, but Jazz believes that, with the element of surprise, this is their best shot at attacking it. Alice leads the attack by sending forth a wave of grasping roots that constrict Shu, who is completely caught unaware. Jazz and Fiona cheer her on. Jazz grabs his magical item, a small dagger, to finish off their prey. However, Shu unleashes a magic circle right in front of Jazz, and a blast of water sends him flying. Fiona are frightened by what they see. Monsters, even high-ranking ones, shouldn't be able to create magic circles without a time delay. Shu rips apart the vines holding him in place, and he launches an even larger blast of water at the 2 girls, which knocks them unconscious. Though the crisis seems to have been averted, Shu finds it troublesome that he was attacked. That's never happened before. While he ponders what the students came here to do, Jazz sneaks up on him and tries stabbing him in the back. Shu glares at him. If Jazz wants to play stupid games, then he'll win stupid prizes. Shu knocks him out and begins draining his life force. He has killed monsters before, but never humans. Despite the change in prey, he feels nothing. No remorse, no regret. Jazz tries reaching out to his 2 friends, but both Alice and Fiona are already dead, their very souls sucked out by Shu. Shu walks over to Jazz and blames him for their deaths. If they hadn't attacked him, none of this would have happened. In his final moments, Jazz is overcome with despair and he dies. Shu floats into the sky. Now that he has killed students, the institution they hail from is bound to be alarmed, which means that the forest is no longer a safe place for him to hide. He must look elsewhere for a new hiding spot. The academy is abuzz with the news of the deaths of Jazz, Alice, and Fiona. They are especially surprised, considering that Jazz was a competent mage in her own right and that nothing in that forest should have posed a threat. The school president is distraught by the news. The faculty members start pointing fingers at each other, but one of them, Sasa, points out that their priority should be killing whatever killed their students. They consider contacting the army, but the president instead turns to the local church bishop for help. Sasa remarks that the forest is a place frequented by students for self-training, but in light of recent events, it has become far too dangerous. The president concurs, and he commands that the forest be sealed off for the time being, and he asks any available faculty members to thoroughly investigate it. As the teachers leave, the president hopes that his deepest fears don't come true. Meanwhile, a group of 4 students is revealed to have been eavesdropping the entire time. I sure hope they don't get any funny ideas. Shu moves even deeper into the forest, where he seems to be surrounded by spirits that look similar to his earlier base form. He continues to absorb the life force of monsters, and these spirits seem to have taken a liking to him. He hypothesizes that he serves as a higher life form to these spirits, and they are crowding around him as a survival tactic. One of the spirits gingerly approaches Shu, but before he can hear the ghost out, his ears perk up. Footsteps, Sasa and Marcus cautiously step into the woods. Marcus whistles for his bird, Pui, which attacks the nearby trees that Shu is hiding in. The attack allows them to confirm Shu's existence, and Sasa urges Marcus not to hold back. Marcus knows all too well not to. He sends Pui to attack Shu, and despite being half-spirit, his arm is brutally ripped off. A black mist envelops Shu's arm as it slowly regenerates, but now he knows that these two aren't like the students he made fools of yesterday. They're going to kill him, and they can. Shu weighs his options in his head. He's not fast enough to drain their life force, and a large portion of his magical energy has already been drained due to their surprise attack. At most, he can muster one large attack. He decides to gamble on an all-out attack. He just needs to buy time for himself to conjure the necessary magical circles. Sasa notices magical circles appearing behind him. He asks Marcus if this is his doing, but he denies casting any spells. They are suddenly distracted by even larger magic circles that hover right above their heads. The circles are larger than anything Sasa has ever seen in his life and long career as a teacher. Unbeknownst to them, the larger circles are all a bluff. The inscriptions are pure nonsense, and Shu's true attack is the magic circle around their feet. When Marcus sees the magic circles around Shu, he realizes that this is the spirit that murdered his students. He immediately sends Pui to kill him, but Marcus is too late. Shu places the finishing touches on his spell, and they are swallowed up by an impossibly bright flash of light. There is no color, just black and white. Moments later, a powerful explosion occurs, alerting the other faculty members sent to investigate the forest. The area around Shu has been burned to a crisp. Not a single tree with leaves remains, and the ground still smolders. The explosion was the result of Shu's use of picric acid and his memory of the steam explosion he caused at the hospital. He gambled that the explosion wouldn't affect him, and it paid off. By now, Shu's arm has fully regenerated itself, and perhaps due to his victory over them, he can sense that he has evolved somehow. However, despite regaining a large chunk of his magical power, Shu acknowledges that he still isn't strong enough to defeat a large enemy force, and he makes the wise decision to flee the scene for now. Shu flies aimlessly until he arrives at the city of Ramza, the capital city of the Grinia Empire. When he lands near the front gates, he notices men in robes similar to the mages he killed. He is in enemy territory. Meanwhile, a group of mages approach a mother and her child, warning her to return home before the undead monsters come. One of the mages kneels to reassure the child that they will protect her at all costs. In response, she cheerily hands him a flower. Shu conceals his presence as he watches the mages stand guard. As long as he doesn't make any sudden or overtly aggressive moves, the cemetery will serve well as his temporary base. He remembers how easily his arm was ripped off during his battle with Marcus and Sasa, and he resolves not to let himself be injured so easily again. Skeleton knights soon start crawling out of their graves, and Shu means to turn them into his food and fuel. Meanwhile, at the anti-demon church, an A-class holy knight, Zek, answers the summons of his old friend and local bishop, Santos. Santos tells him that the divine child has a new prophecy. A great disaster will wash over their land. Santos tells Zek about the incident in the forest a few months ago, in which 3 students were discovered dead. Similarly, 2 faculty members were also killed in an explosion. Strangely, the number of assaults occurring at the communal ceremonies has also dropped, which Santos believes somehow ties in with the incident in the forest, and that these 2 separate events are related to the prophecy that the divine child made. He asks Zek, not as a bishop but as a friend, to help investigate the cemeteries. Zek accepts the mission. Later that evening, Zek is joined by a small battalion of mages and soldiers to investigate the cemetery. Joseph, the one leading the way, explains that a high-ranking spirit seems to be responsible for the drastically reduced number of skeleton attacks. Zek seems fairly confident that he can handle this issue without any problems, but he remains wary of Santo's warnings. Regardless, he reassures his men that his righteous spear will wipe out any foe that dares face them. Shu continues to improve his magical abilities, and he can now cast his spells with greater strength, speed, and precision. After slaying another skeleton, Shu feels like he has leveled up again. Shu's rapid improvement has also caused his magical reserves and the number of spells he can cast to increase dramatically. He has consumed so many souls at the cemetery that he has also gained a few new handy skills. Chief among them is magic sensing, which allows him to detect the presence of targets as though they were in his spider's web. Images of Sasa and Marcus flash into his mind. He muses that they were able to find him so quickly because of this same skill. It is an effective scouting ability, which Shu employs to great effect now. He notices a few men approaching him, and they don't appear to be regular, run-of-the-mill guards. They're packing some serious firepower. Judging by their movements, Shu can tell that they are here for him. Realizing that it is useless to conceal his presence any further, Shu reveals himself to Zek and his men. Zek glances at Shu and identifies him as a nightmare spirit, which is likely the strongest enemy unit in the cemetery. It matters little to Zek. What matters is that he's going to take him down. Shu tries to communicate with Zek by asking why they want to kill him, but it appears that communication between the living and the undead is impossible. When Zek and his men fail to respond, Shu is further placed in distress. Seeing that negotiations are impossible, he decides to fight. He activates one of the magical circles he had placed beforehand, the Slashing Sky Domain. Though Zek realizes what is happening, he realizes it too late. In an instant, everyone except Zek is killed, just as Shu had expected. Zek is in a league of his own. Slashing Sky Domain is one of many magical spells that Shu has perfected during his short stay at the cemetery. Trying to apply a magical effect directly to a creature will ordinarily be blocked by the latent magical resistance that all beings possess. Shu has found a way to bypass this natural barrier by first casting the Absorb spell to drain this invisible shield, nullifying the effect and allowing the spell to break down his opponent. The downside is that it won't work against a target whose magical power is equal to or superior to his own. Zek is left speechless as he stares at the fallen bodies of his comrades. He knows that third-rate spirits with fourth-rate magical spells don't have the ability to perform a feat like this. The men he was with weren't slackers either. They were hardened, experienced troops. So that begs the question, why are they now lying dead on the ground? Zek glares at Shu with a righteous fury and swears vengeance. He raises up his spear, which materializes tens, if not hundreds, of holy spears in the air. Shu carefully watches the spears arrayed against him. He raises a magic shield, built using the most complex magical formula at his disposal. A few spears manage to pierce him, but his magic spell is already in effect. One of the spears turns around, and it launches itself into Zek's eye. Before Zek can process what the hell just happened, the other spears follow suit. Vlad the Impaler would be proud of what Shu has accomplished. Shu floats towards Zek. While Zek would have won in a contest of pure magical energy, Shu used acceleration magic and adjusted the vectors, which allowed him to return Zek's attack with even greater force. The feat was exceedingly difficult, and the risks to his own body were great, but Shu pulled it off. He approaches Zek's corpse and drains what remains of his life force and magical energy. It was unlike anything Shu had ever absorbed before. An A-class holy knight like Zek had access to a great deal of magical power, much greater than anything he'd absorbed in the past. The effects are easily seen, as Shu can now clearly see that his feet no longer have a ghostly appearance. Zek's body, along with the men he was with, are carried back for an honorable burial at the church. The injuries they sustained are consistent with what happened in the dark forest. Santos kneels over the body of his deceased friend. He regrets not taking the prophecy more seriously, and he should have sent more troops in force. But there is little time to mourn. He swears vengeance against this plague or whatever killed Zek. He swears by it. After the incident at the cemetery, Shu wandered deep into Eldera Forest for several months. Goblins at a certain village bow as Shu arrives. One of the goblins reports that a human has entered the outskirts of the forest, and he has also punished several goblins for disobeying orders. What's done is done, Shu says. Due to a series of events, Shu has somehow become the leader of the monsters in this forest. It all started when he first arrived at Eldera. He was once again attacked on sight by the monsters that resided there, and among their ranks were two notably powerful monsters, the High Goblin and the Pig Demon. After defeating their combined forces, both the High Goblin and Pig Demon swore fealty to Shu, despite his not wanting to do anything with ruling. Regardless of his wishes, They explain that this is simply a matter of structure and hierarchy. Shu decided to accept this title since there weren't any visible downsides. Fortunately, there were very few incidents of human interaction, so Shu has been able to maintain a low profile. He'd sure like it if he could simply live out his days in peace like this. Suddenly, he senses something through his spider's web. A fairly large and impressive magical power has entered his domain. A young girl frantically runs through the forest, trying to escape the clutches of a werewolf. The werewolf seems to be enjoying this more than he should. The girl turns around and tries to use one of her magical spells, but for some reason it fails to activate, and she is completely at the werewolf's mercy. The werewolf thrusts two of his fingers inside her chest, causing a small fountain of blood to spurt out. The girl lies motionless on the ground, but slowly, the wound in her chest begins to heal. The werewolf sees this, and he is overcome with great emotion. He's a sadist at heart, you see. Thrilled to see that his victim appears to have a remarkable healing factor, the werewolf takes great joy in repeatedly torturing her. The girl is unable to escape, and she begs for someone to either kill her now or rescue her. Shu watches her from afar, but it remains to be seen if he is here to answer her pleas. Shu observes as the werewolf toys with the girl, which sickens him. If it wanted to kill the girl, it should just get it over with. Sensing that the werewolf might pose a problem if it were to attack the village, Shu decides to deal with it now. As he lowers himself to the werewolf's position, he makes eye contact with the girl, who now appears to be badly bruised and beaten. From her point of view, he appears to be an angel. Shu has a flashback to his previous life. Despite his family's reassurances and compassion, he couldn't help but feel that his life was utterly drab and boring. He sees himself in this young woman, and he remarks that her life must also feel boring. Perhaps on a whim or through a moment of mercy, Shu lands on the werewolf's head, causing it to bite its own tongue off. Shu drains the werewolf's life force, and the woman asks him who he is and why he helped her. Shu glares at her and remarks that he didn't save her. He simply wanted to kill the werewolf. Saving her life was a mere consequence of this action. He leaves her and retires to the village, but the girl chases after him. She thanks him again for saving her life, and she introduces herself as Iris. He asks her what she's doing so deep in the forest, and she explains that she's trying to practice how to gather herbs since she's dangerously close to dropping out of the Magic Academy. She was supposed to be gathering herbs near the entrance, but one thing led to another, and she ended up being chased by werewolves. Shu glances at her and remarks that she doesn't seem like a dropout, and she explains that though she has a good amount of magical energy, she has a poor handle on manipulating it. Having a nuke is no good if you don't know how to fire it. Shu remarks that her instructor should have been paying more attention to her, but she says that her latent magic is defensive. It grants her a state of pseudo-immortality that uses the core of her magic as its source. However, the pain of death remains, but no matter how much damage she takes, she will almost always recover. She will also retain her youthful appearance, possibly even into her 60s. Shu has never heard of such a type of magic before, and he acknowledges that he may have made a mistake by isolating himself from humans. He needs to learn more. While resting underneath some trees, Shu gestures to Iris the way back to town. She thanks him for all the help he's given her, and she'd love to visit his home sometime. Suddenly, they are attacked by a carnivorous pitcher plant. Its grotesque, obscene-looking vines are the bane of women everywhere. If you know, you know. Shu tells her to get out of the way as he uses one of his new magic weapons, Space Field, which is created by an impossibly fast blade of wind to create a miniature tear into the fabric of space-time. The poor plant monster doesn't even know what killed it. When Iris sees this, she is stupefied. She's never seen or heard of such an advanced magic circle. The inscriptions are so dense and complex that she's unlikely to ever understand them, regardless of her immortality. She asks him who or what he is, but he simply smirks and says that it's a secret. Iris continues to whine, but Shu finds her annoying and tells her to go home. Iris says that she still has a mountain of questions to ask him, and she refuses to go home unless they're answered. If Iris won't go of her own accord, then Shu will do it for her. He stretches out his hand toward Iris, and with the wave of a finger, she suddenly finds herself at the town gates. The nearby citizens are startled by her sudden appearance, but if they only knew what Iris experienced. Iris, faced with such advanced and highly complex magic that only an entire army of mages could muster, desperately wants to meet Shu again to satisfy her curiosities. In the city of Erdana, at the local Magic Academy, students speak ill of Iris and her academic failure. A few of them corner Iris, cut off her hair, and tell her that she has no right to look so happy when she can't even use magic properly. Iris comforts herself at home, knowing that Shu would never have done something so mean to her. Shu did not insult her or speak ill of her. He guided her. Also, his eyes are really sexy, so there's that. Meanwhile, back at Eldera Forest, a few of the goblins try to dissuade Shu from wandering too far by alerting him to the presence of a nearby human female. Shu doesn't care and he sends them off. Shu discovers Iris being explicitly violated by a carnivorous pitcher plant, and he rescues her. While Iris catches her breath, Shu asks her why he came back here. Does she like being attacked by monster plants or something? Iris says that she came all this way for him, and she asks him to teach her magic. She cites that his ability to use 6th-tier magic far eclipses the ability of any instructor she has at her local academy, because at most they can use 4th-tier magic. Shu doesn't even let her finish talking, and he starts walking away. Iris chases after him and promises not to be a bother, but Shu tries to tell her that his magical ability is purely self-taught. However, when he sees a vision of his past family in Iris, he curses his past life's memories. Shu relents, and he agrees to teach Iris, but on the condition that she teach him everything about this world, including the town, the magic that mages use. Iris ponders this for a moment, but she ultimately agrees to his terms. Shu had been thinking of interacting more with Iris after realizing that he had isolated himself too much from humankind. He hopes to gain more knowledge by speaking with her. Iris teaches Shu the foundations of their world's system of magic. Long story short, drawing forth these primordial elements is attained by invoking them through magic circles and incantations. This greatly differs from Shu's understanding of magic as an application of a scientific formula, while the humans of this world look at magic as more of a concept. Fire, for instance, can give people warmth in times of cold, but it can also be used as a destructive force. It is in tiptoeing through this delicate balance that magic is used. Iris also explains that magic is split into different classifications based on the strength and complexity of the spell. There are up to 15 tiers of existing magic, though the 9th tier and above are mostly protected military secrets. She then asks Shu to begin his pseudo-lecture, and he asks her what spell she'd like to learn first. She names the wind impact spell that she saw him use against the plant monster that attacked her the other day. Shu demonstrates it for her without a chant, and it is exactly what she wanted. He asks her if she knows what he did, but her understanding of it is shallow. He asks her to really internalize the meaning of wind, how it is created, how it flows, and how it functions. Iris tries it for herself, but her magical circle is shaky and imbalanced, and in no time at all, it collapses in on itself. Shu explains to her that wind is created through air compression, and he applies this understanding to adjusting other spatial settings and adding in a pinch of acceleration magic. In theory, Iris's magic formula should be activated once magic is poured into it, but for some reason she struggles to properly materialize it. Shu kneels in front of her and suggests that she may not know the nature of magic. He compares her to simply reading the lines of a script in a play. Just because she can say the words doesn't mean that she understands them. He tells her that this is what magic is all about, understanding the world around them. Iris has never looked at it this way before, and this serves as a powerful revelation to her. For now, Shu decides to teach her how to refine her basics, and he reassures her that they'll figure it out together. Shu starts teaching her his basic concepts and understanding of magic, and he suddenly remembers his younger self being taught by his father. He can somewhat see himself in Iris. After a few hours of study, Iris is finally able to perform the wind impact spell. Though it was weak, Shu commends her for finally being able to cast magic properly for the first time. A cocktail of emotions wells up inside Iris, but she composes herself and focuses wholeheartedly on the pursuit of knowledge. She asks Shu to guide her even more. Shu initially only accepted Iris as a student because he thought he would benefit from it, but the more time he spent with her, the more he remembered his past life, and it wasn't a bad feeling at all. Days, weeks, and months pass. Iris drastically improves under Shu's tutelage, and the results speak for themselves at the academy. Her meteoric rise is noticed by students and faculty alike, and though there were initially rumors that she was sleeping with professors to get an edge, she eventually silenced her detractors. She achieved the impressive feat of mastering 7th-tier magic at her age, and she quickly made a name for herself. Her name, Iris Silverbread, becomes known far and wide as the name of a great mage. Eventually, her labors bore fruit. She graduates, and she is assigned to be a member of the Holy Knights in a year's time. Iris tells Shu the good news, and she thanks him for all the guidance he's given her over the past 2 years. Shu's demeanor seems to have softened with his time with Iris, and he himself has noticed this. Little by little, he could feel his emotions being nurtured. Before, he felt nothing when killing humans, and now he feels happy to see Iris graduate. However, when he learns that she plans to be a holy knight, he remembers his encounter with Zek, and he promptly leaves. Shu finds it strange that Iris has been with him for the past 2 years, but she still can't tell that he is an evil presence. Iris chases after him and says that she wants him to be there during his graduation ceremony. She explains that every year, the graduation ceremony is held at the cathedral square, and since she has no parents, she'd love for Shu to be there as her guardian. Despite the risks, Shu agrees to go. She threatens to chase him down if he breaks his promise. Iris grasps his hand, and they dance, bathed in the setting sun, and with the eerily still trees as their audience.